Before we dive into the story, drop a comment and let us know what city you're watching from. And don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10 at the end. Let's begin. The old stone church stood at the corner of Fifth Avenue, its Gothic spires piercing the gray afternoon sky. Inside, stained glass windows cast fractured rainbows across wooden pews, worn smooth by generations of prayers. The scent of incense and candle wax hung heavy in the air, mixing with the faint perfume of wilting lilies arranged near the altar. Madison Clark had never been particularly religious, but today she needed sanctuary. Her heels clicked against the marble floor as she rushed inside, breathless and desperate. Behind her, the sounds of the city faded into reverent silence. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling her heart hammer against her ribs. 3 blocks back, her ex-boyfriend Nathan had spotted her outside the coffee shop. The same Nathan who'd cheated with her roommate, emptied their joint account, and somehow still thought flowers and apologies could fix everything Madison had run. She scanned the dim interior. The church was nearly empty. An elderly woman knelt near the front, lips moving in silent prayer. A young man sat in the back pew, head bowed. And there, along the side wall, a row of dark wooden confessional booths stood like sentinels. Perfect. Madison hurried toward them, yanking open the first door she reached. She slipped inside and pulled the door shut, plunging herself into darkness. The small space smelled of old wood and whispered secrets. A latticed screen separated her from the other side. She exhaled shakily, leaning back against the wall. Safe, at least for a few minutes. On the other side of the screen, a voice emerged from the shadows, deep, smooth, and decidedly not priestly. "Are you running from the law, or just a bad date?" Madison jumped, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a yelp. She leaned closer to the screen, squinting into the darkness. "Excuse me." "You burst in here like someone fleeing a crime scene," the voice continued, tinged with amusement. "I'm guessing ex-boyfriend?" Madison blinked. "Who are you?" "Someone who also needed a hiding place." There was a pause. "Though I'll admit, I didn't expect company." She pressed her face closer to the lattice, trying to make out features in the gloom. All she could see was the vague outline of a man, tall, broad-shouldered, sitting with an eerie calmness. "You're not a priest," Madison said flatly. "Correct. Then what are you doing in a confessional booth?" "Avoiding a wedding." The answer was so matter-of-fact that Madison almost laughed. "Whose wedding?" "Mine." This time she did laugh, a short, sharp burst of disbelief. "You're hiding from your own wedding? In a church?" Ironic, isn't it? His tone carried a wry edge. "The ceremony's supposed to start in 20 minutes. I'm expected to stand at an altar 2 blocks away and marry a woman I barely know. My family arranged it. Business merger disguised as romance." Madison sat back, her fear of Nathan momentarily forgotten. "So you just ran?" "Walked, actually, very calmly, right out the side door while everyone was distracted by the flower arrangements." He sounded almost proud. "And you ended up here." Seemed appropriate. Churches are for seeking guidance, aren't they? Madison shook her head, a smile tugging at her lips despite herself. "That's the worst excuse I've ever heard. And running from your ex into a confessional booth is better?" She bristled. "I didn't have a choice. He was chasing me down the street like some kind of stalker." "Fair enough." There was a rustling sound, like he was adjusting his position. "So what's your story? Why's he chasing you?" "Because he's delusional," Madison muttered. "He thinks 3 months of silence followed by a bouquet of gas station roses is an apology." "What did he do?" "Cheated, lied, stole $1,200 from our joint account to buy his mistress a necklace." She laughed bitterly, then had the audacity to ask for a second chance. The voice on the other side went quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted, darker, more serious. Some men don't deserve second chances. Agreed. Madison leaned her head back against the wood. And some women don't deserve to be married off like chess pieces in a business deal. Touché. Silence settled between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Strange as it was, sitting in a confessional booth, talking to a runaway groom felt oddly natural. Like the universe had thrown two misfits together in the most absurd way possible. "What's your name?" he asked. Madison hesitated. "Does it matter? We're never going to see each other again." "True. But I'd like to know the name of the woman who interrupted my existential crisis." She smiled. "Madison. Madison Clark." "Pleasure to meet you, Madison Clark. Don't tell me," she interrupted. "Let's keep the mystery. You're just the runaway groom. I'm just the girl hiding from her ex. No last names. No complications." He chuckled. A low, rich sound that made something flutter in her chest. Deal. They sat in companionable silence for a few moments. Outside, the muffled sounds of the city hummed faintly. Inside, the church remained still, a pocket of peace carved out of chaos. "Do you think they've noticed you're gone yet?" Madison asked. "Oh, definitely. My best man is probably having a meltdown. My mother's likely fainted into someone's arms. Very dramatic. She's good at that. And the bride? Relieved, I'd imagine. She didn't want this any more than I did. We've spoken maybe 5 times. Every conversation was about seating charts and cake flavors." Madison frowned. "Then why go through with it at all?" "Duty. Legacy. The same reasons people have been making terrible decisions for centuries." His voice carried a weight she recognized, the burden of expectations. "My father built an empire. I'm expected to maintain it. Marriage to the right family means stability. Investors, power. Love is optional. Obedience is not. That's medieval. That's business." Madison shook her head. "I'd rather be broke and free than rich and trapped." Spoken like someone who's never been broke. She bristled. "I've been broke. I'm broke right now, actually. But at least I'm not marrying someone I don't love." "Touché again," he sighed. "You're winning this argument." "I'm a lawyer," Madison said. "I usually do." There was a beat of surprise. "You're a lawyer?" "Corporate attorney. Well, junior associate. I spend most of my time reviewing contracts and fetching coffee. But technically, yes." "And you ran into a church to escape your ex instead of threatening him with a restraining order?" Madison laughed. "I'm off duty." "Convenient." They fell silent again. Madison found herself wondering what he looked like. The voice suggested someone older, confident. Probably handsome if he was being married off for business purposes. Families like that didn't settle for anything less than perfection. "What happens now?" she asked. "For you, I mean. You can't hide in here forever." "I'll figure something out. Maybe I'll join a monastery, take a vow of silence." "You'd be terrible at that." "Probably." He paused. "What about you? Is your ex still out there?" Madison peeked through the lattice toward the church entrance. "No sign of Nathan. I think the coast is clear." "Then you're free to go." She should have stood up. Should have thanked him for the bizarre conversation and walked out. But something kept her rooted in place. "What if I don't want to leave yet?" Madison heard herself say. There was a pause, then that low chuckle again. "Enjoying my company?" More like enjoying the absurdity of this situation. It's not every day you hide in a confessional with a runaway billionaire. "I never said I was a billionaire." "You didn't have to arranged marriages, business empires, mothers who faint dramatically?" I can read between the lines. "Smart and observant. Your ex is an idiot." The compliment caught her off guard, warmth spreading through her chest. She bit her lip, trying to suppress a smile. "So what happens when they find you?" Madison asked. "Will they drag you back to the altar?" They'll try. My father will threaten to disown me. My mother will cry. My brother will give me a lecture about responsibility, standard protocol. And you'll give in? I always have before. His voice dropped. But today feels different. Maybe it's this place. Maybe it's you. Maybe I'm just finally tired of being someone else's chess piece. Madison understood that feeling too well. Her entire career had been built on doing what others expected. Her parents wanted her to be a lawyer, so she went to law school. Her professors said corporate law was the safe choice, so she took the job. Nathan wanted her to be accommodating and forgiving, so she tried, until she couldn't anymore. You know what I think? Madison said. What? I think you should walk out that door and keep walking. Get on a plane. Disappear for a while. Figure out what you actually want instead of what everyone else wants for you. And what about the company? My family? They'll survive. Empires don't crumble because one person chooses happiness over duty. There was a long silence. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. You make it sound simple? It's not simple. It's terrifying. But it's better than spending your life wondering what if. Madison surprised herself with the conviction in her own words. Maybe she wasn't just talking to him. Maybe she was talking to herself too. Another pause. Then, come with me. Madison's breath caught. What? Come with me. Right now. We'll walk out of here together, get in my car, and just drive. No plan, no destination. Just two people choosing themselves for once. That's crazy. Is it? You're hiding from your ex. I'm hiding from a wedding. We're already running. Why not run together? Madison's heart raced. Every logical bone in her body screamed that this was insane. She didn't know this man. Didn't even know his name. But God, the idea was intoxicating. I can't just disappear, she said, though her voice lacked conviction. Why not? I have work tomorrow, responsibilities, a life. Do you? Or do you have obligations you've convinced yourself are the same thing? The words hit like a punch to the gut, because he was right. When was the last time she'd done something purely because she wanted to? When had her life become a series of checkboxes and expectations? This is insane, Madison repeated, but she was already reaching for the door handle. Completely, he agreed. Meet me at the side exit in 30 seconds. Before she could respond, she heard the creak of his door opening. Footsteps moved away, quick and purposeful. Madison sat frozen for 3 heartbeats. Then she shoved her door open and stepped out into the dim church. Her eyes scanned the space. There, a figure in a dark suit striding toward the side door. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the kind of confidence that came from never having to apologize for taking up space. He reached the door, paused, and glanced back. For the first time, Madison saw his face. Sharp jawline, dark hair slightly disheveled, eyes that even from a distance seemed to pierce right through her. He raised an eyebrow. A challenge. Madison's phone buzzed in her purse, probably her assistant asking where she was, probably Nathan sending another pathetic apology text, probably her mother reminding her about Sunday dinner. She silenced it. Then, heart pounding, she walked toward him. His smile when she reached him was devastating. Up close, he was even more striking. The kind of handsome that should have made her nervous, but instead made her feel reckless. I didn't think you'd actually do it, he said. I didn't either. Madison's voice came out breathless. What now? He pushed open the door. Sunlight spilled in, bright and blinding. Now we run. They stepped out into the alley behind the church. A sleek black car was parked nearby, engine already running. A driver stood beside it, expressionless. Mr. Ashford, the driver said, opening the rear door. Ashford. So that was his name. Madison filed it away, though he still hadn't offered his first name. They slid into the back seat. Leather interior, tinted windows. That new car smell mixed with expensive cologne. The driver pulled away smoothly, merging into traffic. Madison watched the church disappear behind them. "I can't believe I just did that," she said, half laughing, half panicking. Having second thoughts? Ashford turned to face her. This close, she could see flecks of gold in his brown eyes. Terrified thoughts, which is different. Good. Fear means you're alive. He leaned back, loosening his tie. "I'm Ethan, by the way. Since we're apparently running away together, you should probably know my first name." "Madison. But you already knew that." "Madison Clark, corporate attorney who hides in confessional booths and makes impulsive decisions." Ethan's lips curved. "I'm starting to think you're more interesting than you let on. I'm starting to think you're more reckless than you let on. Runs in the family. My father always said I had too much of my mother in me. She was an artist before she married into the Ashford name. Free-spirited, impulsive, drove my grandfather insane." "What happened to her?" Ethan's expression shuddered. "She learned to be what they needed her to be. By the time I was old enough to remember, the artist was gone. Just another Ashford wife playing her role." Madison heard the pain beneath his casual tone. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It's why I won't make the same mistake. I saw what that life did to her. I won't do it to someone else. Or to myself." They drove in silence for a while, the city blurring past the windows. Madison should have been panicking, should have been demanding he take her home. Instead, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. "Free, where are we going?" she finally asked. Ethan glanced at the driver. "Airport." Madison's eyes widened. "Airport? You said I should get on a plane and disappear. I'm taking your advice." He looked at her, his gaze intense. "Question is, are you coming with me?" "I don't even have my passport." "Yes, you do." He pulled her purse from where it had fallen between them and handed it to her. "You grabbed it when you ran from your ex. I saw it sticking out." Madison opened her purse. There it was, her passport, tucked in the inner pocket. She'd forgotten she'd put it there last week after her firm's corporate retreat in Montreal. "This is completely insane," Madison said for the third time, but she was already checking the expiration date on her passport. "Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results," Ethan countered. "This is just spontaneous. There's a difference. Massive insanity is marrying someone you don't love to please your family. Spontaneity is deciding to spend a weekend in Paris with a stranger you met in a church." Madison's head snapped up. "Paris? Unless you prefer Rome or Barcelona. I'm flexible." Her mouth opened and closed. Paris. God, when was the last time she'd done something like this? Never. She'd never done something like this. "I can't just fly to Paris with you. I don't know you. You don't know me. We could be serial killers for all we know." "Are you a serial killer?" Ethan asked, completely serious. "No. Neither am I." "See? We've already established trust." Madison laughed despite herself. "That's not how trust works." "Then how does it work?" She met his gaze, those brown eyes, warm and challenging, and somehow making her feel seen in a way Nathan never had. "I guess we'll find out." Ethan's smile was slow and genuine. "Is that a yes?" "It's a maybe leaning toward insanity." "I'll take it." He leaned forward toward the driver. "Charles, change of plans. International terminal. Paris. First available flight." "Yes, sir." The car smoothly changed lanes. Madison gripped her purse, her mind racing. This was crazy. Absolutely, completely, utterly crazy. And yet something in her chest felt lighter than it had in months. They arrived at the airport 40 minutes later. The terminal buzzed with activity. Travelers pulling suitcases. Families saying goodbye. Business people glued to their phones. Ethan moved through it all with practiced ease. Madison struggling to keep up. Do you always travel like this? She asked, as they bypassed the ticket counter entirely and headed toward a private lounge. Like what? Like you own the place. He glanced back at her, his expression unreadable. My family has certain privileges. I'm not proud of it. But right now, it's useful. The lounge was all glass and chrome, soft jazz playing over hidden speakers. A woman in a crisp uniform greeted them immediately. Mr. Ashford, welcome back. Your usual? 2 tickets to Paris. First class. Next available departure. The woman didn't even blink. Of course. The 6:45 flight has 2 seats available. Shall I book them? Please. Ethan handed over a black credit card. Madison stood there, frozen. This was really happening. She was really about to fly to Paris with a man she'd met an hour ago in a confessional booth. Her phone buzzed again. She pulled it out. 17 missed calls. 8 from Nathan. 4 from her assistant. 3 from her mother. 1 from her boss. And a string of increasingly frantic texts. Nathan, please just talk to me. Nathan, I know I messed up, but we can fix this. Nathan, you can't just disappear like this. Her assistant. Where are you? Mr. Peterson is asking for the Morrison files. Her mother. Sunday dinner. Don't forget. Bringing your cousin. Her boss. Madison. I need you in my office 9 a.m. tomorrow. No excuses. Madison stared at the screen. Her entire life condensed into notifications and demands. You okay? Ethan's voice pulled her back. She looked up at him. I think I'm about to make the worst decision of my life. Or the best. How do you know? I don't. But isn't that the point? We've spent our whole lives making the safe choice, the expected choice. Maybe it's time to make the terrifying one. Madison took a breath. Then she turned off her phone and dropped it into her purse. Okay. Okay? Let's go to Paris. Ethan's grin was brilliant. You won't regret it. I absolutely will. But I'm doing it anyway. They boarded the plane an hour later. First class was a world Madison had only glimpsed in movies' pods that converted into beds. Champagne served before takeoff. Menus with options like seared duck and truffle risotto. This is how you travel? Madison asked, sinking into a seat that felt more like a recliner than an airplane chair. This is how my family travels. I usually prefer economy. Less pretentious. Ethan settled beside her, already loosening his tie further. But today, I'm making an exception. The plane took off as the sun began to set, the city shrinking below them. Madison watched through the window, feeling like she was leaving more than just a place. She was leaving behind the person she'd been, at least for a little while. Tell me something real, Ethan said suddenly. She turned to him. What do you mean? Everyone always wants to know about the business, the family name, the money. Tell me something real about Madison Clark, something you don't tell people at networking events. Madison considered. I hate being a lawyer. The confession came out before she could stop it. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Then why do it? Because I'm good at it. Because my parents sacrificed to put me through school. Because it's stable and respectable and everything I'm supposed to want. But you don't want it. I don't know what I want. She laughed bitterly. How pathetic is that? I'm 29 years old, and I have no idea what actually makes me happy. Not pathetic, honest. Ethan leaned back. Most people never admit that. They just keep pretending until they wake up at 50 and realize they've lived someone else's life. Is that what you're afraid of? Terrified of it, my father expects me to take over Ashford Enterprises. My brother's already VP of operations. I'm supposed to be CEO by 35. Marry well, have heirs, continue the legacy. But I've spent the last 6 months waking up at 3 in the morning in a cold sweat, feeling like I'm suffocating. Madison understood that feeling intimately. What would you do if you could do anything? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Architecture. I wanted to design buildings, spaces that make people feel something. I got my degree before my father made it clear that wasn't an option for an Ashford. That's a shame. You'd probably be brilliant at it. How do you know? Because anyone willing to run away from their own wedding to avoid living a lie probably has the kind of passion it takes to create something beautiful. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something shifted in the air between them. "What about you?" Ethan asked softly. "If you weren't a lawyer, what would you be?" Madison had never let herself think about it seriously. But here, 30,000 feet in the air, flying toward a foreign city with a stranger who somehow felt less strange by the minute, the truth spilled out. A writer. Maybe. I used to fill notebooks with stories when I was younger. My 10th grade English teacher said I had talent, but my parents said writers starve and lawyers eat. Practical. Suffocating. They ordered dinner. Madison chose the salmon, Ethan the steak. The food was absurdly good, nothing like the meals she usually scarfed down at her desk between meetings. They talked through the meal, easy conversation flowing like they'd known each other for years instead of hours. He told her about growing up in the Ashford mansion, all 16 rooms and echoing hallways, about his brother Marcus, perfect in every way their father demanded, about his mother's art studio, locked up now, gathering dust. She told him about law school, the endless studying and crippling debt, about Nathan, who'd seemed charming until he wasn't, about the small apartment she could barely afford, and the student loans that would haunt her until she was 50. "We're quite the pair," Ethan said, swirling the wine in his glass. "Poor little rich boy and the struggling attorney. Sounds like a bad movie. Or a great one." His eyes sparkled. "Depends on the ending. What kind of ending are you hoping for? One where I actually get to choose." Madison raised her glass. "To choosing." Ethan clinked his glass against hers. "To choosing." They drank, and the moment felt weighted with significance, like they were toasting something bigger than just a spontaneous trip. Maybe they were toasting the possibility of becoming people they actually wanted to be. As the flight attendant cleared their plates, exhaustion began to settle over Madison. The adrenaline that had carried her through the day was fading, replaced by the surreal realization of what she'd done. She'd run away. To Paris with a man she barely knew. Her parents would be furious. Her boss would probably fire her. Nathan would spin this into some dramatic narrative about how she was unstable. And yet, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. "You should sleep," Ethan said, noticing her stifle a yawn. "We land in 7 hours. What about you?" "I don't sleep much on planes. I'll read." He pulled out a book from the seat pocket. Architecture Through the Ages. Of course, Madison reclined her seat, which transformed into a surprisingly comfortable bed. The flight attendant brought a blanket and pillow. As she settled in, she felt Ethan drape the blanket over her more carefully. "Thank you," she murmured, already half asleep. "For what?" "For the adventure, even if we both end up regretting it." "I don't think I will." His voice was soft. "Regret is for people who never take the chance. Whatever happens, at least we'll have a hell of a story." Madison smiled into the pillow. Her last thought before sleep claimed her was that Ethan Ashford, runaway billionaire groom, might be the best mistake she'd ever made. She woke to gentle turbulence and sunlight streaming through the window. Ethan was exactly where she'd left him, book still in hand, though his eyes were closed now. "Liar," Madison said. "You do sleep on planes." His eyes opened, a slow smile spreading. "Only when I'm not running from my own wedding." "How does it feel? Being a fugitive from matrimony?" "Liberating. Terrifying. Possibly the stupidest thing I've ever done." He stretched. "You?" "All of the above. Plus, I'm pretty sure I'm fired." "What if you are?" Madison blinked. "Then I'm unemployed with student loans and no prospects." or you're free to do something different, something you actually want. Easy to say when you have a trust fund? The words came out sharper than she intended. Ethan didn't flinch. You're right. I have a safety net you don't. That's privilege I can't pretend doesn't exist. But just because my problems are different doesn't mean they're not real. Madison softened. I know. I'm sorry. I'm just scared. Me too. He reached across the small space between their seats and took her hand. But we're scared together. That counts for something. His hand was warm, strong. Madison didn't pull away. They landed in Paris just after dawn. Charles de Gaulle Airport was a maze of signs and languages, and people rushing toward destinations. Madison felt untethered, unmoored, like she'd stepped into someone else's life. Ethan navigated customs with ease. They collected no luggage because they had none, just the clothes on their backs and whatever was in Madison's purse. First order of business, Ethan said as they stepped outside into the crisp Parisian morning. Shopping? Madison guessed. Coffee. He grinned. Then shopping. They found a small cafe near the taxi stand, the kind of place with mismatched chairs and a chalkboard menu scrawled in French. Ethan ordered in perfect French, which surprised Madison. You didn't mention you spoke French. You didn't ask. I spent summers here as a kid. My mother insisted we learn the language. They sat outside, watching the city wake up. The coffee was strong and perfect. A croissant appeared on the table, flaky and buttery and still warm. Madison took a bite and nearly moaned. This is unfair, she said. What is? That food can taste this good. I've been eating sad desk salads for 3 years. Ethan laughed. Then this trip is already worth it. They checked into a hotel an hour later. Not the grand, historic kind Madison expected, but a smaller boutique place in Le Marais. Their room was on the 4th floor, accessible only by a narrow, winding staircase. You booked one room, Madison said, her heart picking up speed. Ethan had the grace to look sheepish. They only had one available, but it has 2 beds. I can sleep on the couch if you prefer. The room was charming. Exposed wooden beams, tall windows overlooking a cobblestone street, a small balcony with iron railings, 2 beds, as promised, and a couch that looked deeply uncomfortable. The beds are fine, Madison said, as long as you don't snore. I don't snore. We'll see. They spent the first day in a jet-lagged blur. Ethan insisted on buying Madison new clothes, ignoring her protests. They wandered through boutiques in the Marais, where elegant shop owners spoke in rapid French, and Ethan translated. Madison emerged with 2 dresses, jeans, soft sweaters, and more underwear than seemed necessary. You didn't have to do this, she said as they left the 5th store. I know. I wanted to. Ethan carried the bags easily. Consider it payment for putting up with my existential crisis. Pretty expensive therapy session. Worth every euro. They had lunch at a bistro near Notre Dame. Madison ordered something she couldn't pronounce and ended up with the most incredible beef bourguignon she'd ever tasted. Ethan watched her eat with amusement. You really love food. I really love food that doesn't come from a vending machine. She pointed her fork at him. How do you stay in such good shape eating like this? Genetics and a personal trainer who threatens me 3 times a week. Must be nice. It's tedious. But apparently, Ashfords don't get to be soft. There was that edge again, the hint of resentment toward the life he'd been born into. Madison was starting to understand just how much pressure he'd been under. That evening, they walked along the Seine as the sun set. Paris glowed golden, the Eiffel Tower glittering in the distance. Street musicians played on corners. Couples strolled hand in hand. This is surreal, Madison said, leaning against the stone wall bordering the river. Good surreal or bad surreal? Ethan stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Good. Definitely good. I keep expecting to wake up in my apartment and realize this was all a stress dream. If it is, we're both having the same one. They stood in comfortable silence, watching boats glide past. Madison felt something shift inside her, the constant anxiety that usually lived in her chest, the voice that said she wasn't doing enough, being enough, had quieted. For the first time in years, she felt present. "Thank you," she said softly. Ethan turned to her. "For?" "For asking me to come with you. For the plane ticket and the hotel and the clothes and all of it. But mostly for reminding me that life can be spontaneous. I'd forgotten." "You're welcome, and thank you." "For what?" "I've just been along for the ride. For being honest. For not treating me like an Ashford. For sitting in that confessional booth and talking to me like I was just a person instead of a name." Madison met his gaze. In the fading light, his eyes looked darker, more intense. "You are just a person. Not to most people." They stood there, the moment stretching between them like a taut string. Madison felt the pull, the magnetic draw that had been building since the church. Ethan's hand lifted, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Madison." His phone rang. The sound shattered the moment like glass. Ethan cursed under his breath and pulled it out. His expression went tight as he looked at the screen. "My brother," he said. "I should answer it." Madison stepped back, giving him space. Ethan put the phone to his ear. "Marcus." Madison watched his body language change. The easy posture from moments ago vanished, replaced by rigid tension. "I'm aware." His voice went cold. "Tell Father I'm fine." A pause. "No, I'm not coming back." "Not yet." Longer pause. His jaw clenched. "That's not fair. And you know it." Madison looked away, pretending to be interested in the river, but she could hear the strain in Ethan's voice, the weight of family obligation pressing down even from across an ocean. "I don't care about the shareholders. I don't care about the merger. For once in my life, Marcus, I'm doing something for me." Another pause, then softer. I know you're in a difficult position, but this is my life. I need time." He hung up without saying goodbye. For a long moment, he just stood there, staring at the phone like it had betrayed him. "Everything okay?" Madison asked gently. "Define okay." Ethan's laugh was bitter. "My father's furious. The wedding was called off, obviously. The bride's family is threatening legal action for breach of contract. The company's stock dropped 2 points, and Marcus is stuck dealing with all of it. I'm sorry. Don't be. This is what I chose." But he didn't sound certain. Madison could see the guilt written across his face. "Do you want to go back?" "No." "Yes, I don't know." He ran a hand through his hair. "I spent my entire life being what they needed 1 week. I just want 1 week to figure out who I am without all of that." "Then take it. The company will survive 1 week. Your family will survive 1 week. You deserve this." Ethan looked at her, something vulnerable flickering in his eyes. "Do I?" "Yes." She said it with conviction she hadn't known she possessed. Everyone deserves the chance to choose themselves. He stepped closer. "You're very wise for someone who was hiding in a confessional booth yesterday. And you're very self-sacrificing for someone who ran away from his own wedding." "Touché." His hand found hers. "Stay with me. For the week. I know it's asking a lot, and you have your own life to figure out, but yes." Madison didn't let him finish. "I'm in. 1 week. Then we both go back and face whatever mess we've made. Deal." They shook on it, formal and ridiculous, and both laughed. The tension from the phone call eased. That night, they had dinner at a small restaurant tucked down a side street. The owner, an elderly woman with a warm smile, seated them by the window. The menu was entirely in French. Ethan translated, his voice low and intimate in the candlelight. She recommends the duck, says it's her grandmother's recipe. Then I trust her. The meal was extraordinary. Course after course of flavors Madison had never experienced. Rich, complex, perfectly balanced. They shared a bottle of wine that the owner insisted they try, and by the end of it, Madison felt warm and loose and more relaxed than she'd been in months. I could get used to this, she admitted, twirling the last of her wine. Paris or the food? Both, all of it. This feeling of not having to be anyone but myself. Ethan reached across the table, his fingers intertwining with hers. That's the person I like best. Her breath caught. You don't really know me. I know you're brave. You ran from a bad relationship instead of settling. You took a chance on a stranger. You speak your mind, and you're not afraid to challenge me. That's more than most people show in months, let alone a day. Or you're seeing what you want to see. Maybe. Or maybe we're both tired of performing for other people, and this is us finally being real. Madison didn't have an answer for that. Instead, she squeezed his hand and smiled. They walked back to the hotel through winding streets, past shops closed for the night, and cafes with chairs stacked on tables. Paris felt like a dream, soft-edged and glowing. When they reached their room, the atmosphere shifted. The wine had worn off during the walk, replaced by a sudden awareness of the space they were about to share. 2 beds, but suddenly it felt intimate. Madison gestured vaguely toward the bathroom. Yeah, go ahead. Ethan was already pulling off his tie, unbuttoning the top of his shirt. Madison grabbed the new pajamas from the shopping bag and locked herself in the bathroom. She leaned against the door, heart racing. This was fine. They were 2 adults. Nothing had to happen. Except she wanted something to happen. That was the terrifying part. She barely knew him. But in the confessional booth, on the plane, over dinner, she'd felt more connected to Ethan Ashford than she had to Nathan in 2 years of dating. When she emerged, Ethan was sitting on his bed, still in his dress pants but shirtless. Madison's step faltered. She'd known he was fit, but seeing it was different. Lean muscle, the kind that came from discipline, not vanity. He looked up and caught her staring. A slow smile spread across his face. See something interesting? Shut up. Madison dove for her bed, pulling the covers over her burning face. Ethan laughed. For what it's worth, those pajamas are very cute. They're the only ones the shop had in my size. Still cute. They turned off the lights. Darkness filled the room, broken only by the glow of street lights through the window. Madison lay on her back, staring at the ceiling, hyper-aware of Ethan just a few feet away. Madison? Yeah? Thank you. For today. For all of this. You already thanked me. I know. But I mean it. I didn't know how badly I needed this until it happened. She turned on her side, facing his bed even though she couldn't see him clearly in the dark. Me neither. Silence settled. Madison thought he'd fallen asleep until his voice came again, quieter. Tell me something you've never told anyone. The request was unexpected, vulnerable. Why? Because we're in Paris, and nothing feels real, and maybe that makes it easier to be honest. Madison considered, then softly. I don't think I've ever been in love. Not really. I thought I was with Nathan, but looking back, I think I just liked the idea of being someone's girlfriend, of not being alone. But I never felt that thing people talk about. The can't breathe, can't think straight, would do anything kind of love. Maybe you just haven't met the right person. Maybe. Or maybe I'm broken. You're not broken. His voice was firm. You're honest. Most people settle and call it love. You refuse to lie to yourself. That takes courage. Tears pricked Madison's eyes unexpectedly. She'd never thought of it that way. Your turn. Tell me something you've never told anyone. Ethan was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I'm afraid I'm exactly like my father. Cold, calculating, capable of sacrificing anything for success. I ran from that wedding, but part of me wonders if I'm just delaying the inevitable. If I'll end up becoming him anyway. You won't. How do you know? Because people who are afraid of becoming their parents usually work the hardest not to. And because you're here, your father wouldn't have run. He would have gone through with it. True. Another pause. Madison? Yeah? I'm glad you walked into that confessional booth. She smiled in the darkness. Me too. They fell asleep like that. Two strangers in a Paris hotel room, sharing secrets they'd never told anyone. The next few days passed in a blur of museums and markets and meals that felt like small miracles. They visited the Louvre, where Ethan surprised her by spending an hour sketching the architecture in a notebook he'd bought from a street vendor. You're really good, Madison said, looking over his shoulder at the clean lines and confident shading. It's just a hobby. It's more than that. She could see the passion in every stroke. You should do something with this. Like what? Tell my father I want to abandon the family business to draw buildings? Why not? Ethan laughed, but it lacked humor. Because Ashfords don't abandon. We endure. We sacrifice. We build empires even when we'd rather build something beautiful. Madison wanted to argue, but she understood. Duty was a heavy chain. They had lunch at a cafe in Montmartre, sitting outside and watching artists sell their work in the square. A street musician played violin, the notes achingly lovely. Do you ever wonder what your life would look like if you'd made different choices? Madison asked. Every day. But wondering doesn't change anything. It could. We're here, aren't we? You made a different choice, and everything changed. Ethan looked at her, his expression unreadable. Not everything. I'll still have to go back eventually. Face the consequences. But you'll go back different. That matters. Does it? Or am I just postponing the inevitable? Madison reached across the table and took his hand. Stop talking about your life like it's already decided. You have agency. You have power. You're Ethan Ashford. Use that for something you actually care about. Like what? Like designing buildings. Like choosing who you love. Like living a life you don't want to run away from. Something flickered in his eyes. He turned her hand over, tracing the lines on her palm. You make it sound possible. It is possible. You're just afraid. Of course I'm afraid. Fear is what happens when you actually have something to lose. And what do you have to lose? Madison's voice dropped. Besides a company you don't want and a marriage you ran from? You. The word hung between them. Madison's breath caught. Ethan, I know it's crazy. We've known each other 4 days. But I can't stop thinking about what happens when we go back. When this ends. When you go back to your life and I go back to mine. Then don't let it end. The words came out before Madison could stop them. Ethan's eyes snapped to hers. What? Don't let it end. Figure out a way to make this real. Not just a week in Paris. Something more. Madison, my life isn't that simple. Then make it simple. Choose what you want and fight for it. What if what I want is you? The confession hung in the air between them, heavy and electric. Madison's heart hammered so hard she was certain everyone in the cafe could hear it. You barely know me, she managed, her voice unsteady. I know enough. I know you're brilliant and brave, and you don't take anyone's bullshit, including mine. I know you make me laugh. I know that when I'm with you, I feel like myself instead of the person everyone expects me to be. Ethan's grip on her hand tightened. I know this is insane and impulsive, and probably the worst timing in history. But I also know I haven't felt this alive in years. Madison couldn't breathe. Every logical part of her brain screamed that this was too fast, too reckless. But her heart, her stupid, hopeful heart, was screaming something else entirely. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't want this to end in Paris. I'm saying I want to figure out how to make this work. I'm saying— He stopped, took a breath. I'm saying I'm falling for you, Madison Clark, and it terrifies me. But it also feels like the first real thing I've done in my entire life. Tears burned Madison's eyes. No one had ever said anything like that to her. Nathan's declarations of love had always felt performative, something he said because it was expected. This felt raw, honest, terrifying. I'm falling for you too, she whispered, even though you're impossible and privileged, and you left me in a church with a driver I didn't know. Ethan laughed, and the sound was lighter than she'd ever heard it. In my defense, I didn't think you'd actually follow me. Neither did I. They sat there, hands clasped across the table, the Paris afternoon glowing around them. For a moment, it felt like the universe had aligned perfectly. Then Ethan's phone rang again. He glanced at it, and his expression shuddered. Marcus again, Madison guessed. My father. Ethan stared at the screen like it was a bomb about to detonate. I should answer it. You can't avoid him forever. He nodded, standing and walking a few steps away. Madison watched his body language shift again, that familiar tension returning. She could only hear fragments. Yes, I understand. No, I'm not being reckless. Father, that's not fair. I need more time. No, I won't. He hung up, his jaw clenched so tight Madison could see the muscle jumping. When he returned to the table, the lightness from moments ago had vanished. Everything okay? Madison asked, though she knew it wasn't. He's threatening to cut me off completely. If I'm not back by Monday for an emergency board meeting, I'm out. No trust fund, no position in the company, no Ashford name. Madison's stomach dropped. He can do that. He's done it before, to my cousin, when he dropped out of Harvard to join a band. We haven't heard from him in 5 years. Ethan's hands shook slightly as he reached for his wine. My father doesn't make idle threats. Then what are you going to do? The question hung heavy. Madison saw the war playing out across Ethan's face. Duty versus desire. Family versus self. The life he'd always known versus the possibility of something different. I don't know, he said finally. Part of me wants to call his bluff, but part of me knows he's serious. If I don't go back, I lose everything. Not everything, Madison said softly. You'd still have yourself, your integrity, the knowledge that you chose your own path. And what do I do with integrity when I can't afford rent? He laughed bitterly. I know how that sounds. Poor little rich boy, afraid of being poor. But I've never had to survive without the Ashford name. I don't even know if I could. Of course you could. You're smart, talented, capable. I'm good at running a business I inherited. That's different than building something from nothing. Madison bit her lip. She understood his fear more than he knew. She'd built her life from nothing, and it was exhausting. The constant stress, the student loans, the struggle to make rent. She wouldn't wish that on anyone, even if it came with freedom. What if there was a middle ground, she suggested. What do you mean? What if you went back, faced the board meeting but set boundaries, told your father you'd stay with the company but on your terms, that you'd take time to pursue architecture on the side, that you'd make your own choices about marriage? Ethan shook his head. My father doesn't negotiate. Then make him. You hold more cards than you think. He threatened to cut you off because that's his only leverage. But if you walked away, who would run the company? Your brother? Marcus is capable. But is he ready? Is he what your father wants? Ethan paused, considering. No. Marcus is too soft. My father knows that. He needs me. Then use that. Go back, but not as the obedient son. Go back as someone who knows his worth and won't be controlled. A slow smile spread across Ethan's face. You really should have been a negotiator instead of a contracts lawyer. I'm full of untapped potential. Madison tried to lighten the mood, though her heart was heavy, because if Ethan went back, where did that leave them? He seemed to read her mind. Come with me. What? To New York, to the board meeting, to whatever comes next. Don't go back to your old life. Build a new one. With me. Madison's heart soared and plummeted simultaneously. Ethan, I can't just move to New York on a whim. I have student loans, responsibilities. I'll help you, whatever you need. That's not how it works. I can't just become dependent on you. Why not? Why can't I help someone I care about? Because it changes the dynamic. Because then, I'm not your equal. I'm your charity case. Ethan's expression shifted, frustration bleeding through. That's not what I meant. I know, but that's how it would feel. They sat in tense silence. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the cobblestones. The magic of the afternoon had curdled into something complicated and painful. I'm sorry, Ethan said finally. I'm not trying to make you dependent. I just don't want to lose you the second we get back. You won't lose me, but we need to be realistic. You have a life in New York. I have a life in... She stopped, realizing she'd never actually told him where she lived. Chicago. I live in Chicago. Chicago. Ethan's face fell. That's not impossible. It's a 2-hour flight. And how often would you make that flight? Between board meetings and business trips and family obligations. I'd make time. Would you? Or would this just become another obligation? Another thing you have to schedule between the life you're supposed to live? Ethan didn't answer, because they both knew she was right. They walked back to the hotel in silence, the earlier warmth between them replaced by a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. Madison felt like she was mourning something that hadn't even fully begun. In their room, they moved around each other carefully, like dancers trying not to collide. Ethan sat on his bed, head in his hands. Madison stood by the window, looking out at Paris glowing in the twilight. I don't know how to do this, Ethan said quietly. Do what? Balance what I want with what I owe. My whole life, I've been told that Ashfords don't get to be selfish, that we have responsibilities bigger than ourselves, and I've accepted that. But then I met you, and suddenly I want to be selfish. I want to choose you over all of it. Madison turned from the window, her heart aching. But you can't. I don't know. His voice cracked. I wish I could say I'd walk away from it all, that I'd choose you without hesitation. But I'm terrified of what that would mean, of who I'd be without the Ashford name. You'd be Ethan, just Ethan. And maybe that's enough. What if it's not? The vulnerability in his eyes broke her. Madison crossed the room and sat beside him, taking his hands. Then we figure it out. Together. But I can't be the reason you run away from your life. That's not a foundation. That's escapism. Is that what this is to you? Escapism? No. But it could become that. For both of us. She touched his face, making him look at her. I meant what I said earlier. I'm falling for you. But falling isn't the same as building. And I think we both need to go back and face our lives before we can figure out how to build something together. Ethan leaned into her touch, his eyes closing. When did you become so wise? Somewhere between the confessional booth and the salmon. He laughed, sad and soft. Then he kissed her. It wasn't the passionate, desperate kiss Madison had imagined. It was gentle, almost reverent, like he was trying to memorize the feel of her lips, the taste of her breath, the moment before everything changed. When they pulled apart, tears streaked both their faces. I don't want to lose you, Ethan whispered. You won't. But we need to be smart about this. I'm not good at smart when it comes to you. Then I'll be smart for both of us. They held each other that night, fully clothed, on one bed instead of two. Not making love, just being close. Madison listened to Ethan's heartbeat, steady and strong, and tried not to think about how soon she'd be sleeping alone. The next morning, Ethan booked them flights back. Him to New York, her to Chicago. Different planes, different times. Like the universe was reinforcing the distance between their lives. They spent their last day in Paris quietly. No museums or fancy meals, just walking through the city hand in hand, trying to soak in every moment. I'll call you, Ethan promised, as they stood outside a bookshop in the Latin Quarter. When I get back, when I've dealt with my father, we'll figure this out. Okay. Madison didn't trust her voice to say more. I mean it. This isn't goodbye. I know. But it felt like goodbye. They said it again at the airport, Ethan's flight leaving 2 hours before hers. He held her so tightly Madison could barely breathe. Thank you, he whispered into her hair, for being brave enough to follow me into this mess. Thank you for asking me to come. He stopped himself. I'll call you. Then he was gone, disappearing through security, and Madison was alone in Charles de Gaulle Airport, with a heart that felt too big and too broken for her chest. Her flight back to Chicago was long and miserable. The magic of first class had been Ethan's presence, not the fancy seats. In economy, crammed between a snoring businessman and a crying baby, Madison finally let herself cry, too. She'd fallen in love with a man whose life was in a different city, a different world, a man with obligations that outweighed whatever feelings he had for her, and she'd done it in less than a week. When she landed in Chicago, reality hit like a freight train. 17 new voicemails, 43 emails, a termination letter from her firm, effective immediately. Nathan had filed a police report claiming she'd disappeared under suspicious circumstances, which had been dropped when her credit card showed activity in Paris. Her mother had called everyone from her college roommate to her dentist, trying to track her down. Madison stood in her tiny apartment, surrounded by the life she'd run from, and felt the weight of it crushing her. Her phone rang. Ethan. Hi, she answered, trying to sound normal. I just landed. Wanted to make sure you got home safe. I did. My apartment is exactly as depressing as I remembered. Madison. I got fired. The words tumbled out. Nathan tried to file a missing persons report. My mother thinks I've had a breakdown. And my landlord says I'm 2 weeks away from eviction because I missed last month's rent. Silence on the other end. Then, carefully. Let me help. Ethan, just with the rent. Just to buy you time to figure things out. Please. Pride told her to say no. Desperation made her hesitate. I can't. Why not? Because the second I accept your money, this becomes something different. You become my rescue instead of my partner, and I can't let that happen. So what are you going to do? Madison looked around her apartment, at the cardboard furniture and the water-stained ceiling and the stack of overdue bills on the counter. I don't know, but I'll figure it out, I always do. You don't have to do it alone. Yes, I do. That's the whole point. I need to stand on my own before I can stand with you. Ethan exhaled, frustrated. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Maybe. But it's how I feel. Another silence. Then, I love you, Madison Clark. I'm saying it now, even though the timing is terrible, and we're states apart, and everything is a mess, I love you. Madison's breath caught. 3 words she'd waited her whole life to hear from someone who actually meant them, and she couldn't say them back. Not like this, not when everything was broken. Ethan, you don't have to say it. I just needed you to know. I need to go. She was crying now, couldn't stop. I need to deal with all of this. Okay. But Madison? When you're ready, when you've figured things out, call me. I'll wait. Don't wait. Live your life. You are my life. The line went dead. Madison stood in her empty apartment, phone pressed to her chest, and let herself fall apart. The next few weeks were brutal. Madison took any work she could find. Paralegal gigs through a temp agency. Document review that paid by the hour. It was mind-numbing and far below her qualifications, but it paid rent. Barely. She avoided her mother's calls, sent one-word texts to her friends, and absolutely did not let herself look at Ethan's social media. She knew if she saw photos of him back in his world, smiling at some charity gala or business event, she'd completely lose her resolve. Nathan tried to contact her once. She blocked his number. That at least was easy. But not calling Ethan? That was agony. Every night, she'd hover over his name in her contacts. Her thumb would brush the call button. Then she'd lock her phone and force herself to sleep. He'd told her he'd wait, but she couldn't let him put his life on hold for someone who couldn't even keep a steady job. 6 weeks after Paris, Madison was sorting through mail when an envelope caught her eye. Expensive paper, a New York return address she didn't recognize. Inside was a single sheet of letterhead, Ashford Enterprises. Her heart stopped. The letter was formal, professional. But the words made her hands shake. Dear Ms. Clark, we are pleased to offer you the position of Senior Legal Counsel for Ashford Enterprises' new Chicago office salary and benefits package enclosed. Your expertise in contract law and corporate litigation makes you an ideal candidate for our expansion into the Midwest market. Please contact Elena Rodriguez, Director of Human Resources, to discuss start date and relocation assistance if needed. Sincerely, Marcus Ashford, Vice President of Operations. Madison read it 3 times, then she called the number at the bottom. Ashford Enterprises, Ms. Rodriguez speaking. Hi, this is Madison Clark. I just received a job offer letter. Yes. Ms. Clark, we're so excited to potentially have you join our team. Do you have questions about the position? I have a lot of questions, starting with why you're offering me a job when I was fired from my last firm, and my resume probably looks like a disaster right now. Ms. Rodriguez paused. Your resume was more than adequate. Mr. Marcus Ashford personally recommended you based on your work and reputation. Did Ethan put him up to this? The words came out sharper than intended. Another pause. I'm not privy to conversations between the executives, Miss Clark, but I can assure you this offer is legitimate and based on merit. The Chicago office is a real expansion. We need someone with your skills. Madison wanted to hang up. This had to be Ethan's doing, some backdoor way to help her without making it seem like charity. But then a different thought struck. What if it wasn't about her at all? What if Ethan had convinced his father to expand into Chicago because that's where she was? She looked at the salary on the offer sheet. It was more than her old job, significantly more, enough to pay off her student loans in a few years instead of decades. Enough to build the life she'd always wanted. Can I think about it? Madison asked. Of course. We'd need an answer within 2 weeks. Thank you. Madison hung up and stared at the letter. Her phone rang immediately. Ethan. Her thumb hovered over the answer button. Then she declined the call. If this was his doing, she needed to hear it from him in person. She booked a flight to New York using miles she'd been saving for an emergency. This qualified. The Ashford Enterprises building was exactly what Madison expected. Glass and steel, reaching toward the sky, with a lobby that looked like a modern art museum. She gave her name at reception, claiming she had a meeting with Ethan. They didn't even verify, just sent her to the 34th floor. Ethan's office door was closed. His assistant, a polished woman in her 40s, looked up with professional courtesy. Can I help you? I need to see Ethan Ashford. Do you have an appointment? No. But tell him Madison Clark is here, and if he doesn't see me, I'm going to make a scene that will be very embarrassing for both of us." The assistant's eyes widened. She picked up the phone, spoke quietly, then hung up. "He'll see you. Go right in." Madison pushed open the door. Ethan stood behind an enormous desk, phone to his ear, wearing a perfectly tailored suit. He looked every inch the CEO, except for the way his face transformed when he saw her. He ended the call mid-sentence. "Madison, did you create a job for me?" No preamble, no greeting, just the question that had been burning in her chest since she'd opened that letter. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Hello to you too." Answer the question. It's not that simple. It's a yes or no question, Ethan. Did you create a position just to get me to move closer to you? He came around the desk, his movements careful. The Chicago expansion was already in discussion. I suggested accelerating it. And yes, I recommended you for the position because you're brilliant and qualified, and I knew you'd be perfect for it. So you manipulated your company's business strategy to orbit around me. I made a smart business decision that happened to benefit both of us. Madison laughed, sharp and bitter. That's not fair, and you know it. What's not fair is you disappearing for 6 weeks without a single call. His voice rose, frustration breaking through. I told you I loved you. I told you I'd wait. And then nothing. You ghosted me, Madison. I needed time to get my life together. And did you? Is your life together now? More than it was. She held up the offer letter. But I can't accept this. Not like this. It feels like charity disguised as a job offer. It's not charity. It's me trying to find a way for us to be in the same city without asking you to give up your career. But you're still making decisions about my life without consulting me. Madison's hands shook. I told you in Paris, I need to stand on my own. This isn't standing on my own. This is being propped up by you. Ethan crossed his arms, his expression hardening. So what do you want, Madison? You don't want my help. You don't want my job offer. You don't want me to wait. What exactly do you want from me? I want you to see me as an equal, not a problem you need to solve. I do see you as an equal. No, you see me as someone who needs rescuing the job, the offer to pay my rent, all of it. You're trying to fix me. I'm trying to love you, the words echoed in the office. Ethan's chest heaved, his composure cracking. I'm trying to love you, and you keep pushing me away because you're so terrified of needing anyone that you'd rather struggle alone than accept help from someone who cares about you. Madison felt tears burning. That's not fair. Isn't it? You ran from Nathan because he was weak. Now you're running from me because I'm too strong. At some point, Madison, you have to stop running and just let someone love you. The truth of his words hit like a physical blow. I'm scared, she whispered. Of what? Of losing myself. I've spent my whole life trying to prove I don't need anyone, that I'm enough on my own. If I accept your help, if I let you in completely, what happens if you leave? Or if you decide I'm not worth the trouble? Ethan closed the distance between them, his hands cupping her face. I'm scared too. I'm terrified that I'm too much like my father, that I'll hurt you without meaning to, that I'll prioritize business over you, that I'm fundamentally incapable of being the partner you deserve. Then maybe we're both too broken for this, Madison said, tears spilling over. Or maybe we're exactly broken enough. He kissed her, and this time it wasn't gentle. It was desperate, hungry, like he was trying to prove something through touch that words couldn't convey. Madison kissed him back, her hands fisting in his jacket, 6 weeks of longing and fear and love pouring into the contact. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. Take the job because you want it, not because of me. Look at the responsibilities, the salary, the opportunity. If it's not right, turn it down. but don't turn it down just because I had a hand in it." Madison closed her eyes. "What if I take it and we try this and it doesn't work? Then I'm stuck in a city where my ex-boyfriend is my boss." "I'm not your boss. You'd report to the Chicago office director. I'd be in New York. We'd be colleagues in the same company." "That's still messy." "Life is messy. Love is messy. I'm done trying to make everything perfect." He pulled back, meeting her eyes. "I spent my entire life following someone else's plan. I'm not doing that anymore. I want you. I want to build something with you. But I can't force you to want the same thing." Madison looked at him, really looked at him. The Ethan standing in front of her wasn't the polished CEO or the runaway groom. He was just a man, flawed and afraid, and fighting for something he believed in. "I love you," she said. The words came out steady. "Sure. I loved you in Paris, and I love you now. And I'm terrified that I'm making a huge mistake, but I love you anyway." Ethan's smile was blinding. "Say it again." "I love you, Ethan Ashford, even though you're impossible and overbearing and you solve problems by throwing money at them. I love you, Madison Clark, even though you're stubborn and independent to a fault, and you make everything harder than it needs to be." They laughed, and it felt like something unlocking in Madison's chest. "So what now?" she asked. "Now you think about the job offer, really think about it. And I'll work on not trying to solve all your problems. And we try this. For real? For real." Ethan kissed her again, softer this time. "No more running. We figure it out together." "Together," Madison repeated. "I like the sound of that." 3 months later, Madison stood in the sleek offices of Ashford Enterprises' Chicago branch, floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooked Lake Michigan. Her own office, not a cubicle. A title that actually reflected her capabilities. It wasn't perfect. The transition had been rocky. There were days she questioned whether she'd made the right choice. Days she and Ethan fought about boundaries and independence, and the fine line between support and control. But there were also mornings when he'd fly in for a surprise weekend, evenings when they'd video call and he'd sketch buildings while she reviewed contracts. Moments when she looked at her life and realized she was building something real, something hers. The door to her office opened. Ethan carrying coffee and looking slightly windblown from the Chicago cold. "Thought you could use this. You flew here to bring me coffee?" Madison took the cup, inhaling the rich aroma. "I flew here for a board meeting. The coffee is a bonus." He kissed her cheek. "How's the Morrison contract?" "Tedious, but manageable." "How's your father?" "Still not speaking to me. But Marcus says he's softening." Ethan perched on the edge of her desk. "I told him I'm pursuing architecture on the side, enrolling in night classes." Madison's eyes widened. "You did?" "I did. He threatened to cut me off again. I told him to do it. Turns out, calling his bluff works. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you, too." He gestured around the office. "Look at you, senior legal counsel, running an entire division. It's terrifying, but you're doing it." "We're doing it," Madison corrected together. Ethan pulled her close. "Together?" Outside the window, Chicago sprawled in all its messy, beautiful chaos. Inside, Madison felt something she'd never quite managed before: balance. Not perfection, not having everything figured out. Just the knowledge that she was exactly where she needed to be, with someone who saw her, challenged her, loved her, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, then glanced at the preview. "Saw your name in the Ashford press release. Guess you landed on your feet. Nathan." Madison deleted it without responding. Some chapters deserve to stay closed. "Everything okay?" Ethan asked. "Everything's perfect." She kissed him. "Well, Not perfect, but pretty damn close. I'll take it. They stood there, framed by the Chicago skyline, two people who'd met in the most unlikely place and built something neither had planned, for it wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was better. It was real. 6 months into her new position, Madison realized she was genuinely happy. Not the forced happiness she'd convinced herself was enough with Nathan. Not the obligation-driven contentment from checking boxes on life's expected milestones. Real, complicated, occasionally frustrating happiness. The Chicago office thrived under her leadership. She'd hired 3 junior attorneys, negotiated 2 major contracts, and earned respect from colleagues who initially saw her as the boss's girlfriend. That perception still lingered in whispers, but her work spoke louder. Ethan visited every other week, sometimes more. They'd developed a rhythm. Sunday mornings at her favorite diner, walks along the lakefront, quiet evenings where he sketched and she read. Simple pleasures that felt revolutionary after years of performing for others. But it wasn't all smooth. The distance wore on them. Arguments erupted over missed calls and canceled plans. Madison struggled with the lingering feeling that she owed her position to Ethan's influence, even when her performance reviews proved otherwise, and Ethan battled his own demons, trying to balance his father's expectations with his newfound determination to pursue architecture. One Friday evening, as Madison reviewed contracts in her office, her phone rang Ethan's mother. They'd met twice, both times awkward affairs where Catherine Ashford assessed Madison with the cool precision of someone evaluating a potential investment. "Mrs. Ashford," Madison answered, surprise coloring her tone. "Madison, I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all. Is everything okay?" "Is Ethan?" "Ethan is fine. I'm calling about something else." Catherine's voice carried that particular upper-class modulation that revealed nothing. "I'm in Chicago for a charity board meeting. I was hoping we could have lunch tomorrow." Madison's stomach dropped. "Lunch? Unless you're unavailable. I understand if your schedule is full." The polite phrasing didn't disguise the expectation. This wasn't really a request. "Tomorrow works. Where would you like to meet?" Catherine named a restaurant Madison had only read about, the kind of place where reservations required weeks of advance notice, and entrees cost more than her weekly grocery budget used to be. They met at noon. Catherine sat in a corner booth, impeccably dressed in a cream suit, her silver hair styled perfectly. She looked like old money personified, Madison. "Thank you for making time." Catherine's smile was practiced. Of course. Madison slid into the booth, acutely aware of her off-the-rack blazer and department store blouse. A waiter appeared immediately, reciting specials Madison barely processed. She ordered something safe, a salad, while Catherine requested the fish. "I'll be direct," Catherine said once the waiter departed. "I'm concerned about my son." Madison's guard went up. "Concerned how?" "He's changed since Paris. Since you." Catherine's gaze was penetrating. "He defies his father openly now. He's enrolled in architecture classes. He talks about redesigning his life as if the past 30 years don't matter. Is that a bad thing? It's reckless. The Ashford name carries weight, responsibility. Ethan was raised to understand that. He does understand it. He just doesn't want it to define him." Catherine's expression hardened. "And you encourage this rebellion?" "I encouraged him to be honest about what he wants." "What he wants is idealistic nonsense. Architecture won't sustain the family business. His father built an empire. Ethan has a duty to maintain it." Madison felt anger rising. "With all due respect, Mrs. Ashford, your son is 32 years old. He's allowed to want something beyond duty. Want is a luxury. For people like us, duty comes first." "People like you," Madison corrected. I wasn't born into this world. I had to fight for everything I have. And I learned that a life built entirely on obligation is a life wasted. Catherine's lips thinned. I see. And you believe you're somehow saving my son from a wasted life. I believe I love him, and I support him becoming whoever he wants to be, even if that disappoints his family. Love. Catherine's tone made it sound like a child's fantasy. Love doesn't pay for estates. It doesn't maintain stock portfolios. It doesn't preserve legacies. No, but it makes life worth living. They sat in tense silence as the waiter delivered their meals. Madison had lost her appetite, but she forced herself to eat, refusing to be intimidated. You really believe that, Catherine said finally, studying Madison with something that might have been grudging respect. I do. Then you're either very brave or very naive. Maybe both. Catherine cut into her fish with surgical precision. Ethan has never defied his father like this. Not when he wanted to study architecture in college. Not when he tried to delay joining the company. But now, he stands his ground. Because of you. Or because he's finally ready to. Perhaps. Catherine took a bite, chewing thoughtfully. What happens when the novelty wears off? When you've been together long enough that love feels more like obligation? I don't know, but I'd rather find out together than spend my life wondering. Catherine studied her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. A real smile, not the polished one from earlier. You remind me of myself. Before. Before what? Before I let the Ashford name consume who I was a painter, you know. Not very good, but passionate. I gave it up when I married. It seemed necessary at the time. She set down her fork. I don't want that for Ethan, or for you. Madison stared at her, shocked. I thought you'd want him to follow the family path. I do, but I also want him to be happy. And for 30 years, I convinced myself those two things couldn't coexist. Catherine's voice softened. Watching him these past months, seeing him fight for something he believes in, I realized I was wrong. Mrs. Ashford, Catherine, please, if you're going to be part of this family, we should at least be on a first-name basis. Madison's throat tightened. I don't know if I'll be part of the family. Ethan and I are still figuring things out. He's going to propose. The words landed like a bomb. What? He called me last week, asked for his grandmother's ring, the one his father gave to me. Catherine's expression turned knowing. So yes, you'll be part of the family. The question is whether you're ready for what that means. Madison's head spun. Marriage. She and Ethan had talked about the future in abstract terms, but nothing concrete. Nothing that felt this real. I don't know what to say. Say you'll take care of him. Say you'll remind him that happiness isn't selfish. Say you'll keep fighting for the life you both deserve. Catherine reached across the table, her hand covering Madison's. And say you'll forgive an old woman for testing you today. I needed to know if you were strong enough to stand up to this family. You are. Tears pricked Madison's eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. My husband is much more difficult than I am. Catherine's smile turned wry. But I'm working on him. They finished lunch on better terms, Catherine even sharing stories about young Ethan, the boy who used to build elaborate structures from cardboard boxes and dream out loud about designing cities. Madison left the restaurant feeling lighter, like she'd passed some invisible threshold. That evening, back in her apartment, Madison stared at her phone. She needed to call Ethan, but she didn't know what to say. He beat her to it. Hey, how was your day? Interesting. I had lunch with your mother. Silence. Then, cautiously, how did that go? Better than expected. She told me I remind her of herself. That's actually a compliment. She doesn't say that lightly. Madison took a breath. She also said you asked for your grandmother's ring. The silence stretched longer this time. I was going to surprise you. Consider me surprised. Madison's heart raced. Are you proposing over the phone? God, no. I have more style than that. Ethan's voice warmed. But since the cat's out of the bag, yes, I want to marry you, Madison Clark. When I'm ready to ask properly, I hope you'll say yes. That depends. On what? On whether you're asking because you love me or because it's what your family expects. I'm asking because I can't imagine my life without you, because you make me braver. Because when I think about the future, you're in every single version of it. Madison's eyes filled with tears. That's a pretty good answer. Is it good enough for a yes? Ask me properly and find out. Ethan laughed. Fair. How's next weekend? I'll fly to Chicago. We'll do this right. Next weekend works. They talked for another hour about nothing and everything. When they finally hung up, Madison sat in her dimly lit apartment, a smile refusing to leave her face. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. I love you, even when you make me work for it. She typed back, I love you, even when you solve problems by flying across states. 3 dots appeared. Then, together? Madison's response was immediate. Together. The following Saturday, Ethan showed up at her door in jeans and a sweater, looking more relaxed than she'd seen him in months. No suit? Madison teased. I'm off duty. Tonight is just us. He'd planned everything. Dinner at a small Italian place in her neighborhood, the kind of restaurant with checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles. Then a walk to the lakefront, where Chicago's skyline glittered against the night sky. Remember the confessional booth? Ethan asked, as they stood at the water's edge. Kind of hard to forget. I was so sure I was making a huge mistake, running from the wedding, hiding in a church, talking to a stranger through a screen. He turned to face her. Turns out it was the best decision I've ever made. Even though I made everything complicated? Especially because you made everything complicated. You challenged me. You didn't let me hide behind my name or my money. You made me earn you. Madison's breath caught as Ethan dropped to one knee. Madison Clark, you are the most stubborn, brilliant, infuriating woman I've ever met. You make me want to be better. You make me believe that I can be more than what I was born to be. So I'm asking, properly this time, will you marry me? He opened a small velvet box. Inside, a vintage diamond ring caught the light, elegant and understated. It was my grandmother's, Ethan said. She wore it for 53 years. My mother said she'd want you to have it. Madison looked at the ring, then at Ethan's face, open and hopeful and vulnerable. Yes. The word came out choked with emotion. Yes, I'll marry you. Ethan slid the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into a kiss that tasted like promises and futures and everything they'd fought so hard to build. When they broke apart, Madison laughed through her tears. We're insane. We met 6 months ago in a confessional booth. Best meet cute ever. Worst meet cute ever. Agree to disagree. They stood there, wrapped in each other, as the city hummed around them. 2 people who'd run from their lives and somehow found each other in the chaos. It wasn't perfect. Madison knew there would be hard days ahead. Family drama, career challenges, the normal struggles of building a life together. But they'd face it together, and that made all the difference. What happens now? Madison asked. Ethan smiled. Now we start planning a wedding. And hopefully, I actually show up to this one. You better. I'm not hiding in any more confessional booths. Deal. But if you need to hide, I'll hide with you. Madison leaned her head against his shoulder. Together. Always together. And under the Chicago stars, with the ring warm on her finger and Ethan's heartbeat steady against her cheek, Madison believed him. Their story had started with running away. But this was them running toward something, toward each other, toward a future they'd choose every single day. The end was really just the beginning. Don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10 in the comments below. And let us know, would you run away with a stranger you met in a confessional booth? Share your thoughts.